The next question I'd ask you is here in Romans 8:30, it talks about, moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called. And whom he called, them he also justified. And whom he justified, them he also glorified. Glorification, this is talking about when our body is glorified. And so this is a future event, yet God talks about it as if it were a past event. Well, why is that? Well, Romans 4 tells us that God calleth those things which be not as though they were. And in context, this is talking about who are the children of Abraham. It says, therefore it is of faith, that it might be by grace, to the end that the promise might be sure to all the seed, not to that only which is of the law, but to that also which is of faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. As is written, I have made thee a father of many nations. If you look at when this was written, back in Genesis 17, this was written before Abraham even had a child. Yet God tells him, I have made thee. He doesn't say, I will make thee. He says, I have made thee. Because God calleth those things which be not, those things that are not yet, he calls it as though they already were. Because since God promises it, it's as good as if it already happened. Because God cannot lie. So if God promises something, it will happen. That's why he can talk about it in past tense, because it will happen no matter what. So when God promises something, it has 100% guarantee that it will happen. That's why he uses the word glorified here in past tense. Even though glorification of our body has not happened, he can talk about it as though it already happened because it is a promise of God. And so we can count it just as if it already did happen because it's 100% guaranteed that it will happen. But where I want to focus is this, that's whom he justified, them he also glorified. Every single person that God has justified, he will glorify, is the promise that God is making here. Well, how are we justified? Well, it says in Romans 3, therefore we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law. Once we put our faith in Christ, we are justified. Once we are justified, God promises that we will be glorified. If a person puts their faith in Jesus Christ and they are justified, but then they lose their salvation and they are not glorified, that would make this verse a lie, and you would be calling God a liar. But God is promising that everyone that is justified will also be glorified. So how could someone be justified and not glorified? Well, the answer is they can't. If someone is justified by faith, if someone is saved, they are 100% guaranteed to be glorified because they cannot lose their salvation.